Hey, what's up, my people? John Middlekauff, new YouTube channel. What I need you to do, subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, share with your friends. Appreciate everyone that has. It's the podcast, 3 and Out. You can listen wherever you listen to podcasts. Apple, Spotify. We got you covered. Also, thevolume.com. We got merch right here. FlexFit hat. Go to thevolume.com. Get yourself a 3 and Out hat. What a Sunday. Chiefs, Niners in Vegas. What a day. Did not see Kansas City coming. Didn't see the Lions coming quite like that until Dan Campbell. We'll dive into it all. We're going to have a big week, big couple weeks. Obviously, we got one game left. The Taylor Swift Bowl, Niners, Chiefs. Damn, who would have thought? I thought Niners, Ravens, and then for a second it looked like Chiefs, Lions. What a freaking day. Dan Campbell. Man, I went on with Colin. We talked a lot about it, but we'll dive into it a little bit here too. And obviously the Brock Purdy experience. Man, just still in a whirlwind of football. But before we dive into some football stuff, here's what I need you to do. I need you to grab your smartphone and download the Gametime app. The Gametime app is the official ticketing app of this podcast. If you want to go to a game, here's what you do. You go look at the event, any game you want, any concert, any comedy show, and you type in the promo code JOHN, 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 get $20 off, get yourself a pair of tickets, enjoy yourself, get out of the house, go do something fun, and do it on us. Gametime, promo code JOHN. Man, I watched a lot of Niner games in my day, and I can be negative like anyone else during a game as a fan, as someone betting on a game, and swear and just get pissed off. And then there's also like a realistic standpoint where you just look at the people you're watching the game with. Even though once you get to a certain age, you've seen it all. You've seen crazy comebacks. You've seen crazy choke jobs. Like there's no event in sports, honestly, probably once you hit 30 years old that you, in some form or fashion, you haven't seen. But there are moments where you're on the couch going, the Lions are going to go to the Super Bowl. They are beating the shit out of the 49ers. That offensive game plan by Ben Johnson and everyone in the league feels, they even kind of alluded to it on the broadcast, that he is going to be the next coach of the Commanders, was elite. I mean, that was like Andy Reid meets Kyle Shanahan, meets Lincoln Riley back in Oklahoma, meets like Chip Kelly in 2011. Like, what was that? Every play he was calling, every single play he called worked. Even ones that were dropped, ones that were incompleted, ones where guys tripped. It was insane. I think it was the best offensive play calling in a big spot you're ever going to see as a huge underdog. It was a clinic. And I was just, I was okay going, yeah, they're going to lose. They cannot get a stop. Honestly, it crossed my mind. If the Niners get blown out of this game or lose by double digits, does Kyle have to call Bill Belichick and ask Jed York, can we just give him like 1 year's $25 million and become our defensive coordinator? Because this was an abomination. And then Dan Campbell. And listen, I like Dan Campbell. What he's done with the Detroit Lions is incredible. That visual in the, I don't think it's called the Superdome anymore, whatever. Superdome, I think, was in Seattle, but Metrodome, whatever the dome was called back in the day in Detroit. All those people in there, that's what sports is all about. That's as cool as it gets. And there had to be a lot of people in there looking at each other like, we're going to go to the Super Bowl. Like, how much can we afford to pay to get tickets? Because we got to be at this game. To all of a sudden, it unravels. And going for it, I am pro being aggressive in any walk of life. Whatever you do, whether it's, professionally, personally, lean aggressive. Now, be smart about it, but like lean aggressive more than being conservative constantly. That's not going to get you anywhere. But there is a time and a place where you go, is this a good idea? And whenever people say, and you'll see it on social media, I'm sure you will see it on people talking about it, on the different shows and podcasts, it's not about the result. It was the right decision. In an NFC Championship game, when you are beating the shit out of an opponent in their place, and you have a chance to go up 3 scores in the second half, when, let's face it, Brock Purdy was kind of all over the map up until then. You got to kick the field goal. You go up 17 points. There's just a deflation element if you make that like, we got to get 3 possessions. We have to score on 3 possessions. It's do or die. We don't even have that many possessions left in the game. We may get 4. We have no margin for error. To the moment you don't get that, and then they go right down to score, everything shifts. I spent some time when I was in radio around Billy Beane and the Oakland A's. And one thing Moneyball, and they were great at a lot of things, really successful. And what they did was very impressive with a low budget. But they believed this to their core, that momentum and like clutch, right, in big spots have no impact. The stats are the stats. That's just bullshit. There's momentum in life. Think about your life when things are going well, usually, or you're confident. Things usually go better than when you're down in the dumps and you're not feeling confident and you're in a negative frame of mind. So when you get a positive action, it's easier to build on and get something else positive to happen. The Niners had nothing positive going for them. Everything was going Detroit. And the moment he goes for it, 24-10, and they drop it, everything shifted. And it was just on like Donkey Kong from then on out. They score, Detroit gets the ball, they fumble, Niners score again, all of a sudden you get a tie game. Like, I guess I kind of get your defense is not stopping them going forward again, right? And not kicking a field goal when it was 27-24. But that spot, 24-10, if you have faith in your kicker, you got to kick the field goal there. Sports and life is about circumstances and situations, right? There's a time to like wear a t-shirt and a backwards hat. You're probably not wearing that to a wedding, right? When you can go for that maybe in week 4 against the Chicago Bears next year. Okay. If you lose the game, it's not the end of the world. In this spot against that team who was just down in the dumps, I don't understand it because it's not the right move. I'll never believe it till you bury me. I don't care what happens the rest of my life watching football. That is the wrong decision. And I also think it speaks to this argument about Brock Purdy feels a little like telephone, right? It's like, did you hear what this guy said about Purdy? And it's just constant that going on. Everyone talking about him and then talking about what other people said about him. There was like these break-ins where my mom lives in like her community. And they kind of think it's this one guy who I happened to know when I was like 14 years old. And through like the grapevine, my mom, my brother's wife, to this other person, it's like, oh, John is friends with him. And again, we don't even know if it's the guy, but it's like, I'm friends with him. I fucking haven't talked to him in 25 years. But that's just kind of how the telephone goes. Well, it's no different with sports. Is that like one thing kind of grows into something way bigger. And then all of a sudden last week it became, of course, Purdy, like we had to compare this guy to Mahomes and Josh Allen. Like who was doing that? I thought that was the stupidest comment I've ever seen. Brock Purdy's a polarizing player because he can have moments where he does look pretty bad. He does not have a great arm. But the one thing that when championship level players respect you and go to bat for you, there's some that are trying desperately to get over the hump. I mean, guys that have made a ton of money, guys that have been to all pros and Pro Bowls, some going to Hall of Fames. Trent Williams will stand in front of his locker for 5 minutes and just discuss how Purdy is undervalued. Like eventually it starts to mean something to me. Now, do I think he's going to be some Hall of Fame player? I wouldn't bet on it now. I'm not, hell, I thought he was playing pretty bad through two and a half quarters. But mental toughness and being able to handle adversity as a quarterback is a really, really big deal. And it would have been really easy for Purdy tonight to go into the tank. A lot of quarterbacks in his situation historically have. They've melted down. And he made some atrocious plays. We were talking before I hopped on, a couple of those plays to Ayuk. One that Ayuk turned into like Richard Sherman and broke up. The other one that bounced off the guy's head and Ayuk caught. I believe that Kyle schemes a lot of stuff in practice that works. And then they get into the game, and a lot of times it also works, and the quarterback's just going to pull the trigger when, the play is called. Well, I think Detroit, and I think both coordinators, this is where I get mad at Dan Campbell, like his coordinators did a great job. Their corners have been getting burned all game long, but both of those plays, the DBs were behind them. I've watched Detroit all season. Their DBs are usually on the other side of the offensive player. And, he got a little lucky, right? I mean, he did not, like, this wasn't a Mahomes performance here. But in the second half, making runs, being under control, not throwing the ball to the other team, because they definitely wouldn't have been able to afford a turnover, and making plays with his legs, just willing his team with his legs to get some big plays. And the only reason they were in that position was because of the Dan Campbell kick. Like, that was just unacceptable. It can't. If I'm a Detroit Lions fan, I'm sick. And if I'm a Niners fan, pretty happy going to Super Bowl. And I get a little rematch with Patrick Mahomes. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official betting partner of the NFL playoffs, is bringing you an offer to help make the playoffs electrifying. New customers can bet $5 on any game and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook now and use code JOHN. New customers can bet $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN JOHN. The crown is yours. When I was around the San Francisco Giants back in like 2012 and 2014, Hunter Pence used to have this thing, and he called it championship blood. And in 2014, when the San Francisco Giants won the World Series, no one picked them. I mean, they were a wild card. They had to go on the road and win a game, I think in Pittsburgh, if I remember correctly. They had no business winning the World Series. But Hunter Pence just kept saying this over and over and over, was championship blood. It's in our DNA. And my favorite two athletes by a mile of our time, all time, are Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods. And to me, those guys are the epitome of that. Because Torrey Pines, the golf tournament, was on this weekend. I went back and watched some highlights of Tiger when he won the U.S. Open with a torn ACL and stress fractures in his knee. And it was like, how did he do this? Because that's what champions do. They just find a way. When everyone goes, what are you doing? In that tournament, his caddy told him to quit on Thursday. I'm watching this game with Mahomes going into it like playing the Ravens, best defense. Chiefs can't. It's hard for them to score. This is not going to be possible. I swear to God, 2 series in, I'm like, Chiefs are better. I can't believe I put money on the Ravens against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes because you felt it right away. Travis Kelce running around out there like he's a fifth-year guy, not 33, 34 years old. And you're watching, I mean, the quarterback is just, it doesn't get any better than that. I mean, he's clearly the best quarterback, and he has been in the NFL for 4 or 5 years. Like, there's a gap between him and everyone else. Like, I thought last week, if you just take the 2 games that they played, Josh Allen's better than than Lamar Jackson. I would rather have Josh Allen than Lamar Jackson. That's not shitting on Lamar Jackson. I think clearly the best 3 guys in the NFL, are Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Lamar based on the season. But you watch today, like, he left a lot out there to be desired. It was not pretty. You watch one guy who's the ultimate champion, who's going back to try to win the first back-to-back Super Bowl since the Patriots in the early 2000s. And you watch this other guy who's got MVPs and he, has great stats. And you're going, what the hell? It had a little bit of like I hate comparing him to this guy because I would take Lamar Jackson on my team 100 million times over the other guy. But it got to the point in Houston with James Harden was like all these MVPs, or I guess he only won one, but Gerald Morey said he could win it all the time, all this points. And it's like, give me a fucking break. No one I'd want to bet against more in the playoffs than that guy. I don't feel that way quite like Lamar, but if he's playing a championship level team, you're just not going to pick him. Like that's where we're at. If you got the Kansas City Chiefs and they're playing Lamar Jackson, I don't care what the point spread is, you're taking the Kansas City Chiefs. We learned that today because of the gap between Patrick Mahomes, who's out there throwing to a rookie from SMU, Travis Kelce, who's 33 years old, Isaiah Pacheco is a 7th rounder, and just there wasn't 1 minute in that game, not 1 minute after it started, where you ever thought they were going to lose. And that's what champions do. You're like, of course Michael Jordan's going to win this. It's crazy. And you're talking about 2 guys now who are just approaching legendary shit, right? Both of them are already Hall of Famers, right? But they're going, like Belichick and Brady crossed the line after whatever year. Like these guys are going to the Hall of Fame these guys are trying to hang out with Vince Lombardi up in heaven one day, right? These guys are going to play golf in the back nine in heaven with like Michael Jordan. And that's what it felt like today. Was like, this is as good as it gets. Night game was opposite, right? It was like, God, this is herky jerky. Niners, what's going on here? I thought this was supposed to be a championship team. The Chiefs were like, we're the fucking champs. Everyone take note. Did you also notice? I didn't really watch the Niner celebration. I would imagine there was a lot of jubilation. You didn't really feel that way with the Chiefs. Like, yeah, of course we won. That's what we do. This is the fourth time we're going to this game. We're used to it. Guess what's going to happen next year? We plan on, I don't even know where the Super Bowl is in 2025, but we plan on being there. That's what they feel like. And if you like sports, people always say like dynasty, I want new blood. Bullshit. Like you want someone to either root for or root against. And if you hate the Chiefs, easy team to root against. If you like greatness and you're not a Niner fan, it would put them in pretty rare air. Going back to back, be their third. What a win. I mean, what a freaking win by Andy and Patrick Mahomes and Spags and the whole team. I mean, it's a team game. And they were so much more. One thing Baltimore hung their hat on all season long was just being like this heavyweight fighter, being like the tough guy in the ring. And then you watch today, you're like, where is it? What's going on? Like, where's the tough guy? Roquan made a couple hits. Defensive line made a couple plays. Before, like, one thing they hung their hat on was being the bully. I saw them do it against the 49ers. They bullied them around. And today the Chiefs showed up there and they hit them square back in the jaw. They say, listen, we're not intimidated by all your tough guy bullshit. We're tough too. We're going to win this game. And Mahomes made play after play. They just are so under control. One thing with football, when you're the home team and you get down, you got to keep your cool. Like this is why you train so hard, right? You got to keep your cool. The moment you get frenetic, the moment you get fidgety, Lamar got that way. Their whole team felt discombobulated. Todd Monken felt discombobulated. You can implode. You can lose when, listen, the Lions were a really good team. I don't think they were some like championship level team. Now, who knows? Maybe they could have won the Super Bowl, but to play the Chiefs, when they're playing their A game, to beat them, even if you got a better rosters, you're gonna have to play your A game. You start playing your B minus C plus game, you're screwed. And you could argue that was like a C minus game by the Ravens. And part of that is Chiefs coaching. And a lot of this becomes tactical. That's what NFL football is. It's tactical. That fourth down, when it was 27-24, and Dan Campbell went for it, they ran this concept of the guy coming across the middle. And for a split second, obviously Jared Goff thought it was man coverage. And the guy was going to be open what it looked like on a little curl. And that Dre Greenlaw was going to chase the dude in the slot. And then they broke off into like some zone coverage and Dre Greenlaw was sitting there. All of a sudden, Jared Goff had to hesitate. And then the defensive linemen were all over his ass and he had to scramble. And then he threw it and it hit the turf and fourth down, Niners get the ball. And listen, I don't even know how good Steve Wilks is. Might not be all his fault. The players aren't playing that well, but tactically, I wouldn't put Steve Wilks up there with like, Belichick or anything. But that was a tactical move. And that was a huge reason the 49ers won the game. You have to make adjustments. And it's hard to make adjustments when your players are all out of sorts. And we talk a lot about, I think we see this a lot in the NBA, right? Players choke. I think they do. A lot of times you start playing hot potato, you don't want the ball. I'm a big golf guy. You see it a lot in golf. A guy implodes. You can feel him getting tight. He just ball starts flying everywhere. He starts rushing himself, starts hitting too fast, pumps it in the water. You can just feel it. We don't see the coordinators, right? We don't have a camera on them like we do the players. I think you would be shocked how many times coordinators, their ass gets really, really tight and they kind of lose their sense. And I think that happens more often than not. Like ultimately Dan Campbell went for it because that's all he does is go for it, which I think if you go, what do you do? Well, I just always do this. I think that's stupid. Yeah, I do this the majority of the time, but if this happens, I'm going to do this, right? And you saw Todd Monken, and it just felt like he got tight. And I'm not absolving Lamar. He also played bad. He did not look good. But that combination of those two guys, like this is not in basketball, I'm always putting on the players. You just fucking one-on-one against a guy. You can either score or you can't. In football, to me, I put it much more on the coaches a lot of the time. Trust me, Steve Wilkes, would he have had a job tomorrow morning if the Niners would have lost that game? I don't know. You ain't firing Bosa or Fred Warner. You ain't firing Charvarius Ward. Fire the coordinator, right? And I thought today, Todd Monken, you can't tell me, I didn't have a camera in his office when he's calling these plays, that he didn't get super tight. Because, listen, it happens to me. You get flustered. You don't think straight. And it was Belichick's greatest attribute. It's now Andy's greatest attribute. Sometimes Kyle can get really tight. Sean McVay can get tight. It's human nature. It's actually understandable. But when you're the play caller, you got to stay calm because it feeds onto your players. And it was just an abomination by the Ravens. As good of a win as it was by the Chiefs, and I do believe that it might be the third best win of Andy Reid's career. I think the two best wins of his career are obviously the Super Bowl. It doesn't get any better than that. But I think you could say today, the way they went into Baltimore and shoved them around and beat their ass, that's the third best win of his career. It was that impressive. Just a coaching clinic of like, I'm Andy freaking Reid. I'm the best coach in the league right now. I'm headed straight to the Hall of Fame whenever I want. You think you guys are beating me? And that's not how he ever talks. And he gave high character, high class guy. That was a clinic. And we used to see that a lot with Belichick during the Brady years. You're starting to see that with him. Like you're seeing Kyle. Listen, I think Kyle's excellent. Now, Kyle is in this unique spot where he's going to a second Super Bowl in 5 years. He's been to 4 NFC Championship games. He's won the division 3 of 5 years. Like he's having a ton of success. Yet like 80% of the fan base, every other game wants to strangle him. But everyone respects, like, listen, he's fine. But he get a little tight. You feel it when you're looking at him. There's a calmness with Coach Reid. And it's something that builds out. It's part of his personality. But you get to the experience, you're 65 years old, you've seen it all, you're a little unfazed. When Belichick looked across and Pete Carroll and everyone was freaking out, like he'd been there, done that. So everything was on full display today. We saw it all. Epic collapses, epic choke jobs, championship medal showing up on the road, winning a game that no one thought they were going to win besides Chiefs fans. Just unraveling from a coach and a quarterback who are, you could argue, he's been one of the better offensive coordinators of the league, and Lamar's going to win the MVP. Right? So that's the best. At the end, the Lions just kind of do what the Lions do. Score a bunch of points, go for on fourth down. If it works, great. If it misses, you lose it. I mean, it was just, you saw it all today. It's hard to beat the NFL. We only got one game left. Everyone, I'm sure, see Taylor Swift going to fly back from Tokyo. I bet these tickets are going to be expensive. And man, what a day. What a day. Went on with Colin, did about an hour with him. I'll talk a lot more this week. I'm not going to get into right now. The Eagles hired a bunch of people. The Steelers were interviewing someone. We'll dive into that over the next couple of days. But tonight should be about these AFC and NFC Championship games. The Niners and Chiefs get a rematch. My initial thought is it's a lot different than the last time they played. The Chiefs were an elite offense then, and the Niners were an elite defense. This defense of the Niners is leaking major oil. Their run defense is terrible. But their offense is way better than that team. And if you remember, the Niners were kind of beating the Chiefs' ass in that game. They were scoring at will. Obviously, they hit the late play to Tyreek Hill to kind of get them back into the game, but Niners had it. But that Niners defensive line was dominant. It was so good. It was rookie Nick Bosa. It was DeForest Buckner. It was a younger Eric Armstead, and it was Dee Ford. This defensive line right now feels like Bosa and hopefully like Hargrave or Eric Armstead can make a play. Chase Young's not very good. The Niners' offensive guards are not great, and Chris Jones is going to give them fits. He really is. Now, the Niners, Purdy in this moment, a lot of people are going to talk about him. I do think, instead of just like, is he great? Is he shitty? Dude was the last pick in the draft. He was the last pick in the NFL draft. And he's a starting quarterback for the number 1 seed in the Super Bowl. I think sometimes, and listen, I'm guilty of this too, not necessarily with Brock, but in general, it's so easy to be negative and try to nitpick. Like, it is an incredible accomplishment. It truly is. When you're the last pick in the draft, if you have a 5-year NFL career, that's remarkable. I mean, it doesn't get any better. If you have a 5-year NFL career as the 262, if you had an 8-year career, you'd be like, holy shit, how'd this guy do that? To be a starting quarterback, making plays in the NFC Championship game, and then starting in the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Like, shouldn't we just, instead of like nitpicking him, he's a second-year player. It'll play itself out over the next couple of years. Obviously, he's not, this guy's not throwing it like Josh Allen, but he's pretty good. He makes some plays. He benefits from playing with good players and a good coordinator. He's the last pick in the draft. He's the last pick in the draft. I think sometimes we lose sight of that when everyone's diving so deep in like all these other elements of him. He was the last pick. So, but it's just going to be shitting on Purdy or anointing Purdy. There's no middle ground, and that's just kind of the times we're in. Brock Purdy, Patrick Mahomes. Who would have thought? I guess a lot of people. They were probably two of the best odds to be in the Super Bowl to start the season. So here we are, and congrats to Coach Reid, who I think is a big reason why I'm sitting here. And the guy's gone on to Kansas City, changed his career. I mean, he was already an incredible coach with Philly, but what he's done in Kansas City and specifically Mahomes now is turn the big guy into a living legend. So if you're a Chiefs fan, obviously Niners fans, I know you're all happy, texting with a lot of you, but let's roll Vegas, baby.